So today, EA and Codemasters released 15 minutes of gameplay of F1 25. Unfortunately, EA being EA, they've released it with commentary over the top of it, so we can't get raw gameplay to see exactly what it's like. But what I'm doing today is I am showing the key differences between F1 25 and F1 24. I've gone ahead and gone to all the different tracks in relatively the same conditions, in the same cars, on the 24 game to try and compare the two to see where the biggest differences are. This video did take me a little while to record and to put everything in place to the best of my ability, so apologies this video is late. Please leave a like and subscribe, and let's see what the biggest differences are between F1 24 and F1 25. So we start off in the menus on the car selection screen, which looks quite visually appealing, have to say. That's a big step up from F1 24 already. We're heading to the Austrian Grand Prix for the first track. Now this is a reverse grid race, and we are trying to go from last to first. I'll have my gameplay cut in a second. Now, of course, I can't have a reverse grid race because it's F1 24, so I've done my best to replicate it by doing time trial. Now, the biggest difference for me in this first comparison is not so much about the track, because Austria hasn't changed from F1 24 to 25. The biggest difference is actually in the way that the car responds to the bumps, and I'm really glad that they've started with Austria because it's the same track. They haven't changed it too much. They've changed the handling of the cars themselves. Now on 24, the car was really quite responsive to bumps and off-track surfaces like curbs as well. On 25, it's so much more stable, and the car gets affected much less by the bumps and curbs and other surfaces like that, providing a more stable aero platform. Whereas on 24, it was very easy to destabilize that, especially if you've got a proper setup on. Now, for fair comparison, I'm running default setup on F1 24, and you can still see how much the car was getting affected by the bumps, especially through that middle sector. Now, when I watched this gameplay on F1 25 first, I thought that sunset effect was beautiful on F1 25, and I was quite surprised at how close I was able to get that with F1 24. I'm running maximum graphics settings and all that, so F1 25 is better, but the difference between the two games is very close. On the subject of sunset, I think this is an area where the F1 games are already excelling and looking really nice in those low light kind of conditions, those changing conditions as it goes from, afternoon into early evening. Always looked very stunning ever since F1 2019. One area of weakness since 2019 has always been broad daylight conditions, so like midday. Always looked a bit flat, always looked, I don't know, not quite as nice. And this is an area where when we go to other tracks, you're going to see actually how much F1 25 has stepped up in that regard. So for Austria, F1 25 sunset conditions, I can't lie, there's not that much of a difference on this track, but this comparison here was more about just showing you the differences between the track in the reverse direction with some of the braking boards versus the track on F1 24, me just driving in the reverse direction. That's probably where the biggest differences lie in this one. There will be bigger differences in more of the tracks, which we're about to do. And speaking of which, here's the next one. Now, this is the first LiDAR track that we're seeing in this gameplay, so now you're going to see some pretty big differences between the F1 24 track and the 25 track. So here we go, heading down into turn one. The first thing I've got to say about the handling differences is the low speed grip, I would say, is a lot higher in 24. Now, 25 is meant to be a slower game. How much slower remains to be seen, but if I had to put a number on it, it might be about a second a lap slower. Both still with default setups on both. You can see the visual changes to the track, mainly on the outside parts of the track, so like the buildings, fences, the sky as well is quite a bit more vibrant on F1 24, whereas on 25 it looks a bit more hazy, like it's a hot, warm day, that kind of effect that you get. I think that's quite realistic. We're seeing an overtake by the driver on another car. bit of a side-by-side battle here, but this is a really big difference here, the curbing through this Mickey Mouse section, I like to call it. And you can just see how understeery 25 is, at least in the hands of that driver. Again, this is the exact same time of day, so a pretty direct comparison. And I think, to be honest, midday looks a lot nicer on 25, but you'll see exactly in another track's comparison as well how much better it actually is. Now, heading down into the last corner is a lot more satisfying to drive now on 25. It's quite undulated on 24 as you go through it now. It kind of dips away off camber on exit. And then on 25, it looks like it's a bit more flat. It looks like there's more grip there when you plant the power down. Now, I have driven this track on 25 as well, so I can vouch that the last corner does feel a lot more satisfying in terms of actually laying down the traction out of that corner. So that is very nice. Now, Miami feels a lot different to how it did on 24, both visually and in the way that you drive it as well. Use of the curbs as well is something that you can just smash over those, which is quite nice if you like your curb usage. However, if you're looking for more of a challenge, then you are probably not going to get as much of that with 25. It seems like they've made the underside of the car a bit more forgiving when it comes to going over off-track surfaces. So make of that what you will.
Woo. Well done, everybody. Massively deserved.
That's a nice touch, isn't it? Oscar Piastri in the flesh.
Yeah, his actual team radio included in the game.
Loving that from the podium, and off we are. This is looking like a massive step up. So using Valve Index base stations and a Vive tracker mounted onto a camera rig, EA took the existing podium cutscene animations in Motion Builder and used a plugin which allowed EA to record the tracking data from the Vive tracker. So this gave EA the natural movement that would be expected when a camera operator is reacting to events unfolding in front of them. Hence the step up.
How much are they paying Matt to say that? I wish he would say that in his own words. It is a nice step up. The faces, the graphics of the drivers and their movements as well is much better than 24. But this is a driving game, so that's nice. But we're quickly going to forget about things like that. Now we move on to Silverstone, where we are again showing off a reverse grid race. This time, though, we're going into the pits, so this is quite fun. Notice the texture of the grass being on the right-hand side tire there. That's something I've noticed through a lot of the gameplay which I've seen so far, and even when I've gone off track myself, the grass and gravel that remains on the surface of the tire for a few rotations is really nice. But anyway, here we go. Down this straight, this is the Wellington straight. Notice the bumps, or lack of, in F1 25. That is probably one of the most prominent straights, apart from Zandvoort last corner, you'll see that later, where how bumpy the track is. Barely noticed it in my time driving over those bumps in Silverstone. Now, here we go in for a pit stop. And in F1 24, you get reset back to the track. On 25, you can actually make a pit stop in a reverse grid race. So this works properly now. A proper reverse grid race where everyone goes in through the pit exit and comes out through the pit entry. One thing to note as well is this pit entry for Silverstone is absolutely deadly. Look at how fast you're coming into that pit entry, and it's a downhill approach as well. That is going to catch out so many people when it comes to trying to maximize the time gain on entrance to the pit lane. There are going to be so many people who get done for speeding. I mean, it's even the case in the normal pit entry for Silverstone, but now we're going downhill, and it's just going to catch so many people out, which I can't wait to see in online. Anyway, coming in for the pit stop, and this is a good opportunity to show that the turn-in graphic UI has had an update, which is nice to see. On go the hard tires, and that camera angle is a really nice view of the pit stop. Anyway, pit exit, you can see the safety car off to the left. The line is coming up here as we go underneath the podium to leave Silverstone via the pit entry. And I can't get used to that. I cannot get used to that as well. So cool. Out we come into the racing line and into Stowe, that is. Really hard to pick your turning point with everything being so backwards. All of the Braking marker boards, the DRS boards have been moved to their adequate locations. The sponsor boards have moved as well. And one thing which is really cool, I was not expecting this, is we now have an extra DRS zone on the circuit. As I have a skill issue on F124, ignore that. We cut to full screen with F125. We go through cops, and here is a DRS zone. A DRS zone in which we wouldn't have got if we were going in the forwards direction. That's a nice change. More overtaking. Thank you very much. Now, the next track on offer is Bahrain. And now this is where things get spicy because we're now getting race scenarios. So here we are in the day. This is a huge difference to 24, is we now have engine temperatures affecting the car. As you can see, we're 24 and 25. I tried to line this up to be the exact same lap. I was always following a car in their dirty air, in their slipstream, and you can see visually the temperatures are a bit hotter on F125, but not by a great amount. And in the way that this has changed is that Codemasters have made the engine temps more sensitive to how they were on previous games, at least on first impression. F123 had engine temperatures where if you followed for too long, your engine would start to overheat. When your engine overheats, you start to lose performance. So this is a key change which I hope is going to stop people from following in DRS trains so closely. If we have, engine horsepower drop off from overheating, then we're going to start seeing people drop off the back of other people, and we're going to see more natural racing again. I've also heard that dirty air is much more of a thing for the F1 games, so that is really cool to see how that's going to affect things. But yeah, Codemaster's putting me through my paces running the chase camera. I can't lie, that was painful to drive with a wheel. But can I just say how nice daytime looks on 25? It's subtle differences, but they've just made it look a little less cartoon-like, which I really appreciate. And as well, another really cool thing which I noticed with the gameplay, especially with the AI as well, is did you notice their tire compounds? You can see on 25, there's 3 different tire compounds on use there. Hard, soft, medium. Whereas in my game, you can see 4 softs and 1 medium. I went into Race Director and checked the entire list of drivers in that race. Everyone was on softs, apart from 2 Haas cars on mediums. So that tells me right there that it looks like they're thinking about tire strategy a little bit more and trying to have a little bit more variance, because on 24, things were so vanilla. Things were so uniform. Everyone ran the same tires more often than you'd think. And so I'm hoping that this is a positive change where AI are going to run different strategies. Other things to note in this clip, and it's been present through the whole video, but the HUD is still present. I don't love the dials. I really don't like the input telemetry of the throttle and brake trace not being straight lines. I really don't like that. For me, the battery use seemed similar from 24 to 25, just looking at things at face value. So that doesn't look like it's been affected too much. But one thing I do like is the labeling of when you're harvesting battery versus when you're deploying. So I guess for the casuals, they have a better idea of what they can expect from their battery and what that's going to mean for performance. Because sometimes on previous games, you could be harvesting and you wouldn't know unless you were really attuned to the engine notes and also just the feeling of momentum not being there at the end of a straight when you're in none or in medium. So that little visual graphic there is there to help people come up to speed, I suppose. With regards to the engine temperatures being warmer, it looks like the way that they've done this is it looks like when you're off throttle, so when you're braking or, lifting or coasting, it looks like the temperature doesn't budge very much when you're off throttle. So it's the temperature is a bit more stable. If anything, the temperature builds quite a bit through the lap and through the race. Whereas on 24, the difference is when you're off throttle, the temperature comes down quite quickly and it gives the engine a lot more breathing room. Hence why engine temperatures were never really a thing on 24. So I hope those key details have explained how and why the temperatures now react the way that they do. Another thing on temperatures, just looking at the tires, it looks like the tires are a few degrees warmer, especially on the front tires. The front tires look like they get a nice little chunk warmer than what they did on 24. I really hope that they've fixed the tire pressures on 25, because the only setting you would run with tire pressures was to go maximum. And that was to keep them as cool as possible, because the surface temperatures would just escalate out of control if you ran anything other than maximum. It looks like the tire temps are warmer, meaning potentially higher pressures would mean lower temps, and it looks like it might be even more of a problem. It depends on how the surface level temperatures affect things, and this is a detail which I unfortunately don't have much knowledge on, because I haven't played the game at home. I haven't had that much extensive time playing, but at first glance, the temperatures look warmer, especially on the fronts. All right, now we move on to a really nice one. This is Suzuka, another LiDAR scan track in the daytime, and I've just got to say, the difference between 24 and 25 is massive here. Now, the 25 Alpine looks a lot nicer, and that's doing a lot of it, but to be honest, if you just look at the curbs, the coloring of the grass, and the the off-track surfaces, the cherry blossoms in the background, it looks so much nicer than 24. The driving doesn't look nice. And why is that guy revving out fourth gear like crazy, losing so much time like that? But now we've got a really good comparison, because both of us are in a race scenario. Granted, I'm on newer tires earlier on in the race, carrying a little bit more fuel. But, this is a pretty good comparison. You can see areas of AstroTurf are extended. So you've got a little bit more surface area to play with if you do venture off circuit. Some of these curbs are quite deathly curbs on 24, so I'm quite keen to test out whether they're going to be the same deathly curbs or whether they're going to be completely forgiving on 25. My initial impressions is that a lot of the curbs, especially in the first sector, are quite forgiving. Look at that off-track surface there with the AstroTurf, much wider on the exit of Spoon Curve, a little bit more realistic to what we see true to life through 130R. I'm really quite proud of some of the synchronization I've managed to do. I did a dive bomb on the AI in the exact same spot as the player here. You can see there's no AstroTurf in 25 through the Casio triangle. And again, we do a DRS train overtake, spamming the battery, flying past an AI. I did get nice by Hamilton there as we fly past on the straight and into turn number 1. You can see just there that it was pretty lined up. So if that isn't evidence that 25 and 24 are going to be fairly similar in terms of the way that you achieve lap time, then I don't know what will. As far as I'm concerned, the F1 games are a little bit too fast compared to real life, and that is something that needs to be pulled back on a little bit, take away a little bit of the grip, especially at low speeds, and then I think we're on to a winner. But, visually, Suzuka, massive step up, and I think what really enhances it, like I said, is some of the filters that they're using to color grade the environment just to look that little bit more realistic. I can't put into words how much better it looks on 25 compared to 24 than this example right here in Suzuka. Mwah. Some really positive steps made in the right direction here. And it's been in an area of weakness, which has been the daytime running, where the game arguably looks its worst. Now they've improved their weakest link. I just want to come back to this overtake on the AI at the hairpin. Now, these are two overtakes on the same part of the track, but slightly different circumstances with slightly different results as well. I come from further back to dive bomb the Kick Sauber. You can see the Alpine on F1 25 actually doesn't rotate the car very much into the hairpin, and they actually go straight on a little bit. But what's interesting here is the AI on the right-hand side actually fights for the position around the outside a little bit better than what the AI did in my gameplay. And up until the midway part of the corner, I've got to say that my AI got given more space at the mid part of the corner, and it tightens up on exit, but the AI completely backs out on 24. I'm quite good at squeezing them out to do so. On 25, I will say the driver didn't squeeze them out as much as I did. They left him a little bit more space, but the AI remained side by side and just gives signs of life that they might fight for things a little bit more. We're going to have to test this a lot, but this is our first little glimpse into how the AI looks like on the new game. I think it's time for some wet weather gameplay, don't you? So let's test out some wet weather gameplay at Melbourne in Australia. Now, huge difference between the water droplets in the cutscene versus 24 and 25. But then when we actually get into the race, I actually noticed that things were pretty similar in terms of the raindrops that were falling across the screen right in the middle of the shot. Now, I did this race on 24, and the rain seemed heavier in the first lap or so. Now, that's probably because of more AI traffic being closer to you, more spray, more droplets. Also, when stationary on 24, there was a huge amount of rain droplets, whereas once we get going, it seems to be about the same level. I actually thought they changed the rain on 25, but looking at this comparison, it all looks pretty similar, it must be said. It must be said. Also, in terms of the way that you achieve lap time, yes, the 24 car with me driving is ahead, but how much of that is driver skill? Probably a little bit of that, actually. You can see I'm pushing the limits of the car a lot more. I'm pushing very hard into high-speed corners. I'm using track limits a little bit more. I'm battling with AI as well. To be honest, it looks like things are very similar in the wet with 24 versus 25. I'm interested to see how 25 handles in the wet in terms of the consistency of how the handling model is the rain. Some days on 24, the game would feel completely different, one wet race to another. I hope there's a little bit more consistency in that sense. You can see I have a big old back end loss with the grip. The cars are very slidey in the rain, but overall, I always feel like there's way too much grip in the wet, and things have not changed on 25. It still looks like there is a lot of grip with this game too, which is a shame. I've been quite positive up until this point, but that is a negative. The rain, especially heavy rain, is the same. Let's end on a more positive note then. The final track of this gameplay is the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. This is the reverse track. Again, a reverse track in which we haven't seen too much gameplay of just yet, so here we go. Straight away, F125 through the last corner. Way easier on the bumps. It is a night and day difference between F124 and 25. I can't overstress enough how much of a nightmare it was going through that corner over the bumps on 24. On 25, it's a non-issue. They've smoothed it out, not only at this track, but many other tracks as well. In general, the car runs over bumps much nicer, and it seems to affect the car much less. So, some might argue you're taking away some character, but at this track, you're making the user experience that much more pleasant. Anyway, as we run through the middle sector, you'll notice that we touch the grass every so often. I tried to do it on 24 just to give you a visual comparison of what it's like to touch the grass. Yes, there's a little bit of particles and stuff which remains on the tire for a fraction of a second, but it hangs around much longer when you touch grass on 25. Now, running through here, that's a flat-out corner. If you get the line right. This corner in particular is the most dangerous on the calendar because you don't know where to turn in. It's such a long corner, you need to spot your turning point. I guess you just need to do a lot of practice. Here's again with another flashback immediately after the first crash, and I crash again. That corner is brutal, especially with the way that the wall sticks out and protrudes going in the reverse direction. As you can see there, we touched grass on 25 and it remained on there for a little while longer. The animation in general is just a lot nicer than what it was on the previous game. So that's just about everything for F1 25. To summarize, graphic fidelity is a lot nicer, especially in daytime. Bumps less noticeable, more forgiving, curbs more forgiving. Wet lap times seem almost identical to the previous game. AI looks like they might be a little bit more feisty. Hard to tell just yet. But in general, there's more positives here to speak of than negatives. So I've come out of this feeling a bit more optimistic about F1 25. I think we're looking at a more of a polished game. So I'm happy to see that. The reverse direction tracks are nice. The addition of an extra DRS zone around Silverstone in reverse was quite nice as well. But those are just my opinions. Let me know what you guys think as well with regards to what you've seen today. Unfortunately, it's not direct gameplay from me. I've done my best to add to the video by bringing in some context with F1 24 for that direct comparison. Hopefully you guys appreciated that, to see the true differences and some of the similarities really to 24. But that's where I'm going to leave it today. Join me in a couple of weeks' time where I'm actually going to be able to capture my own gameplay and release it for you guys to see. So make sure you subscribe to see that. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, and I'll see you very soon for more F1 25.